Hi everyone, this is Melissa. I go by Stitching Liz here on YouTube and also over on Instagram. It would mean so much to me if you would follow me in both places. Thank you so much for joining me today, for coming back if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new. Today I'm going to show you how to hand sew a pillow in a simple way that I've devised by myself. I didn't watch any tutorials for it. I just did it. Which means that this is not a professional way to hand sew a pillow. It's just a way to hand sew a pillow. And if you find it as easy as I do, I hope it helps you. If you're someone who doesn't have a sewing machine, doesn't know how to use a sewing machine, that's what happened to me, is that I wanted a pillow and I don't have a sewing machine and I don't even know how to use a sewing machine, but I wanted one. A little while back, I made this little pillow with a Dollar Tree kit that I had stitched in my Dollar Tree kit review, and I made it into a pillow, and somebody had requested a tutorial on how I did it. So that's what I did for you, is a tutorial. Here's the back of the pillow. I display it in this little basket from Dollar Tree as well. And I decided to do my second Dollar Tree kit. And so this is the pillow I'm going to show you how to make today. This is a recent finish of mine. This is the back. So I give you instructions from beginning to end on how I made this. I think I'm going to display it in the bowl, either together or on its own, but I was very excited to make it. I like the way these turn out. I'm very happy with them. So I hope this technique helps you, and I appreciate your watching. Thank you so much, and here's my tutorial on a hand-sewn pillow. Okay, so let's go over the materials that you'll need to make your little pillow finish. First of all, you'll need your piece that you're going to be working on. I'm going to be doing this Dollar Tree kit that I got. That's the earth with love and a couple of stars. I'm going to make this into the pillow. This is done on Aida fabric. You can also use linen and still use the same technique that I'm going to use. But it definitely works really nicely with Aida. So you need your piece. You need a backing fabric. I found this really nice blue striped kind of watercoloring look at Dollar Tree. It's 18 by 21 inches. I'll open it up so you can see it. And you just need a piece of fabric that's going to be big enough to fit the back of your piece when it's cut to size. You may want to use some fusible interfacing. I use this one, Heat and Bond. It's an iron-on fusible interfacing. This is a lightweight one. I think you could use a medium weight one and it would be fine. But I didn't really know a lot about fusible interfacing when I bought this, so I went with the lightweight. So you may want to use this. Of course, you'll need some scissors. You're going to need some sewing thread. This is the one that I am using, Coats & Clark. This is actually made for English paper piecing, but it's just a good sewing thread. I'm using white. My fabric is white on my Aida, so I feel like this is a fine color. You also will need a needle. I'm going to show you the needles that I'm going to use. So these are the needles. They're applique needles by Bowen. They're size 11. They're very pointy. You need just a sewing needle, a pointy sewing needle to do this. So these are the ones that I'll be using. You need stuffing. So I just have polyester filling. and you need an iron. So let's get started. The first thing that you'll need to do is iron your piece if it needs to be ironed. Now I turn it over on the back, and I iron on the cotton setting on my iron. And it takes a little bit with this Aida. This Aida is very stiff. It's Dollar Tree Aida, so it's not high quality. It's very stiff. So you just need to iron this until it's as flat as you need it to be to cut to the size that you want your pillow to be. So you can see this is working out pretty nicely. That hoop, the hoop ring is coming off. So I'm pretty happy with that. The other thing you'll need to do is decide how big you want your pillow to be. So this is where we're gonna cut our Aida to the size that we want to sew our pillow. You're gonna decide by doing how many rows you want out from your actual design. Find the longest and widest points of your design and decide how many rows out you want to go for your front of your pillow, and then you're going to count a few more rows to have a margin for your seam allowance. So I think I want to go, if this is the highest point of my design, this star right here, I think I want to show up to 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm going to go 5 rows up, and then I'm going to go another, I think 3 or 4 rows for the seam allowance. So it just depends on the size of your Aida. This is really big 14 count Aida, so 3 or 4 rows is plenty for the seam allowance. You could also be a lot more exact and use an actual ruler and measure if you wanted to, but I find it easier to just count rows. So I'm gonna go, let's see, the furthest point on this side, and we're gonna start cutting. So this is the furthest point on this side. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and then add 1, 2, 3, 4, I think I'm gonna go 5 for the seam allowance, and then I'm gonna cut along that line. So again, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just cut off this excess fabric. And of course I'm using my scissors that do cut fabric here. If you have good fabric scissors, it helps. Okay, and we're going to continue that on the other side. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and cut. And you're just going to continue that on the other 2 sides. I'll speed this part up so that you don't have to hear me count and cut. So we'll just do this. Okay, so now my piece is cut to the size that I want. The next step is going to be to put on the fusible interfacing. So you're just gonna cut a piece that covers the actual stitching. You don't wanna go all the way into your seam allowance because it will make it harder to stitch your pillow together. So you just wanna cover the majority of your stitching. And I don't know if you can see it, but the fusible interfacing has a smooth side and a textured side. The textured side is the side with the glue, and that's what goes down. So I'm just gonna cut a piece that will cover the stitching. It does not have to be in any way, shape, or form perfect. It just needs to cover the majority of the stitching. So let's see if that's big enough. That's actually a little too big. We're gonna cut this down a little bit. Let's see. Okay, so again, make sure that you have the textured glue side facing your stitches and the smooth side facing up. Then you're gonna take your iron and you're gonna hold it down on top and press for about 15 seconds in one spot. And then you're gonna move it to the other spot. And again, press down and hold for about 15 seconds. And then you're gonna check to see if it's really stuck. You may need to make your iron hotter, like go to the linen setting on your iron. You wanna make sure it's stuck down. So you see, it's kind of coming up a little bit on the edges. So I'm gonna turn up my heat to the linen setting, and I'm going to do this again a little bit longer until it's stuck down. And this just protects your stitches and also keeps the stuffing from poking through the front of the pillow. Okay, so that's looking a little better. The next thing you want to do is get your fabric that you're going to be putting on the back. And we're going to be cutting the fabric to the size of your piece. This includes the whole size that you cut for the seam allowance, because you also need the seam allowance on the fabric. So we're just going to put that piece against and then cut along the edge. On these two sides. And then you want to just iron your fabric so that it's nice and straight and smooth. So iron that. Okay. So then you want to put your right sides facing together. So you're gonna put your good side of your stitching in and the good side of your fabric in. And you're gonna flip it over to have the Aida side facing you. Make sure it's all lined up. and then flip it over again. This is where you're going to need your thread and needle. So what I like to do is take a nice long piece of thread and measure about the length of my arm. Cut that off. Then I double it up so that it's actually doubled, which will make it stronger. And then I thread my needle. The hole on the sewing needles is much smaller than on tapestry needles that you use for cross stitch. So this part's a little tricky. Okay, and then I just pull a tail down. And then what you want to do is from the back, you want to count down the 5 rows you saved for your seam allowance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you want to be in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's this spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to put your needle through both the Aida and the fabric. Pull through until you have a loop on the back. And then go back down from your fabric side in the next hole of your Aida and do the loop method to secure your first stitch. So that stitch is really tiny to see on this side of the fabric, but you just did the loop method. Now, this is going to be the corner of your thread. So you want to go through this side 3 or 4 times to secure the corner. So I just go up through that hole and back down through the other side. And I do that 3 or 4 times. Okay, so then we're going to be going straight along this line here, making stitches, and we're going to be using a back stitch method. It's a little tricky to find the holes at first, but you start to feel your way. So you're going to poke from the back on the Aida and then go down into the previous hole. And then come up through the Aida and then go back down through the previous hole. And go up through the next hole and then go back down through the previous hole. And you continue along the line until you get to the corner again. And then when you get to the corner again, you're going to go through that corner stitch 3 or 4 times again to strengthen it. So I'm going to speed this up and work my way across until I get to the corner, just to show you how I turn the corner. Okay, I just want to show you that if you run low on thread and you need to end your thread and start a new one to finish your side, what you can do is come to the side of your thread, pull through, go underneath the previous stitch that you made, pull it through until you have a little loop, and then run your needle under the loop and pull to make a knot. And then just repeat that a couple of times to strengthen the knot so that you have knotted to end your thread. And then you can cut off and start off where you left off. I also want to remind you that I started at the top. We're going to be going around from the top down one of the sides and then across to part of the bottom and then down one side and across part of the bottom. We need to leave a hole open to turn the project inside out and stuff it and then close it. So let me continue until we get to the corner. I ran out of thread before I got to the corner. So let me finish getting to the corner and then I'll show you how I turn the corner. Okay, so I have finished the top row of stitching. And I stopped 5 rows in from the edge where my seam allowance is. And what I just want to do now is go over that last stitch 3 or 4 times to make sure it is super strong in the corner. So we're just going to go over that stitch a few times. Okay, and then we're going to go down the side. So you're going to actually start moving to the next row down. Poke your needle through that hole and then go back to the corner and then go over this stitch again 3 or 4 times to strengthen this side of the corner. So do this one 3 or 4 times. And then you're going to continue going down the side with your back stitch in this row, just the way you did across the top, but down. I mean, you can turn it this way, to make it easier for you. So you're going to go down the side, turn the bottom corner, but when you get to the bottom, you only want to do about, you want to leave open in the middle about 2 inches, 1.5 inches to turn this. So when you turn the corner, again, reinforce the corner by going over the stitches, and then stop on the bottom side when you get to where you would need to leave about 2 inches in the middle. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then I'll come back. So I have sewn across the top, down the side, and across the bottom to the point that I want to stop to leave an opening. So what I want to remind you to do is at this point where you're stopping to leave an opening, I want you to reinforce this stitch the way you've been reinforcing the corner by going over this stitch 3 or 4 times before you then finish off your thread. So just make sure you reinforce that edge. Now I'm just going to go down the other side and across the bottom to, again, leave an opening about 2 inches wide. So I'll go to about here, and I'll reinforce the corners, and I'll reinforce that final stitch at the opening. Okay, so I have sewn all 4 sides, leaving a gap at the bottom. And what we're going to do now is turn the pillow inside out. Before we do that, we're just going to make it so that the corners are a little bit easier to make a little bit pointier by removing just a little bit of fabric from the corners. Just a little bit. Make sure not to go near your stitching. But just give it a little less bulk in the corners. So we're just going to cut that off. And then gently, this Aida is very stiff and the fabric is very thin. But gently, you can use your fingers first, and then you can use something like a marker or a chopstick. I wouldn't use anything super pointy or sharp to help you turn this inside out. So I find it that you just have to work it through. You're trying to push it through that hole that you left. So that's why you doubled up, tripled up, quadrupled up the stitches on that edge, because you're trying to gently turn the whole pillow through that hole. So if you just start to gently work it, you'll start to see it ease itself through that hole, and you're turning it outside out. So just keep working it through that hole, pushing it through. It's not easy to do, so don't feel frustrated, and try not to push too hard. Try to be gentle. And okay, so now we've kind of gotten over the hardest part, and it's going through a lot easier. So then we just need to push it out. And again, use your fingers as much as possible, and definitely don't use anything sharp like scissors to punch out the corners. But you can use something dull like a pen. Through the hole, you would stick the pen in and push out that corner as far as you can. Being gentle, of course, you don't want to rip your stitches, but that's why you reinforce the corners, because you want to try and turn them out as far as possible. And let's see about this corner. Let's get this a little bit further. I'm going to stick my finger all the way in here and try and get these corners as pointy as possible. Okay. So now you've outsided in, outsided out your pillow. So if you want to, you can run an iron over this just to give it a little bit smoother texture. We're going to now get our polyfill. So you can see I have some polyfill, and you're going to loft it by pulling it apart a little bit, and then in little chunks you're going to stuff into that hole, going into the corners farthest away first. You're going to stuff this pillow with the polyfill as firm or as soft as you want. It helps if you loft it because it makes it smoother and less broken apart inside the pillow. So I'm going to speed this up and give this a good stuff. And I'll show you what it looks like and how we finish off the pillow after. Okay, so this is stuffed about as much as I want. It's pretty firm. Again, make sure you really get into the corners, really stuff it. And now you can see we have this gap at the bottom that needs to be sewn up. It naturally, but if you need to help coax it, will fold along the seam allowance that you created. And we're just gonna do, it's at the bottom of the pillow, so I don't worry too much about how the bottom looks. So I'm gonna do a simple little whip stitch, tiny little stitches to close this shut. I do the needle and thread a little differently for this part. So I have my thread and I have my needle. I'm only gonna thread one end of the thread through the needle this time, but then I'm gonna pull it all the way through so it is doubled over. The difference this time is that I'm not gonna leave a tail. I'm actually gonna create a knot at the end. And it doesn't have to be a pretty knot. So the way that I do that is I wrap 1, 2, 3, 4 times around my finger, and then wiggle, 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 roll and pull And there you have a knot at the end. And like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty because we're not going to see this knot. So you're going to take your pillow and you're going to go in the inside of the pillow, grab a tiny piece of your fabric from the inside and pull your needle through so that that knot gets hidden on the inside of the pillow. Then, holding your pillow closed, you just grab a tiny piece of your Aida and a tiny piece of your fabric and you make a little stitch. And then you just go a little bit ways away, grab the Aida and the fabric and do a stitch. And you keep doing that along the edge of the fabric. I'll show you a couple more times and then I'll speed it up until we get to the end and I'll show you how to finish off. So grab a little bit of each and just go over and stitch, over and stitch. Okay, so I'm at the last stitch and we're just going to pull through until you get a loop, run your needle through the loop and pull through so it's creating a knot, and then just go over that stitch again a couple more times the same way. Pull until you get a loop, go through the loop with your needle and pull. Just do that a couple of times. Then stick your needle through the inside of your pillow until it pokes out the back edge and pull that through to bury your thread. And then give a little tug and press down before you cut. So that your thread pops back inside your pillow. And then you have a finished hand-sewn pillow that you can display any way you'd like. You could add some sort of fringe around this. This is what the bottom looks like. You can see it. Even though we've whip stitched on the outside, it is not very noticeable. The rest of the sides are nice and covered. And this is the back of the pillow. So you can, again, put any kind of fringe that you'd like on this, however you'd like, and decorate it however you want and display it however you want. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.